Universal background checks will prevent gun crimes. First off, if you purchase your gun legally from a gun store, you always go through a background check. I don't know if people understand this. If you purchase a gun legally from a gun store, you have to go through a federal background check. It's a 4473 form. You have to fill it out. It runs through the national database. Every single legal purchase from a gun store goes through a federal background check. When people talk about universal background checks, what they're saying is that every transaction needs to go through a background check. And that would include things like gun shows, private person-to-person sales, right? And when they're saying that there's not universal background checks, that's what they're talking about. If you purchase a firearm from a reputable dealer at a federally licensed firearm location, you are going to go through a background check. Now, when they talk about mandating background checks for person-to-person sales or at gun shows, that's a completely different entity and a completely different situation. The only way that you can mandate that people do a background check in person-to-person sales is if people adhere to that, right? The people that break the law are going to purchase their firearms on the street. They're going to purchase their firearms on the black market. They're not getting a background check. Any individual person that wants to buy a firearm from another individual person, if they do not disclose that, how can you mandate that they get a background check? Again, all of these laws, they only work if people follow that law. You can put as many laws on the books as you want, but the criminal, by the nature of what they do, the nature of how they move, the nature of how they carry themselves, they are not going to follow the law. So a lot of this stuff is kind of moot, and it becomes just further placing barriers in front of people who are naturally law-abiding citizens, right? So when you hear that people are not having to go through a background check, the average everyday American citizen who is purchasing their firearms legally, they're going through a background check. You cannot purchase a firearm from a actual firearms dealer without going through a background check. That is a blatant, bold-faced lie. They're talking about gun shows and they're talking about person-to-person sales. But remember, the average criminal that buys their gun on the street, there's no background process.